Tonight we step out of the flickering candlelight of your own quiet room and into the overwhelming, pre-dawn blackness of a medieval town. You don't just wake up. You are violently harvested from sleep by a deep, resonant thud that shakes the very timbers of your modest dwelling. It's not thunder. It's the town's great drum, or sometimes the slow, deliberate tolling of the parish bell, the first authoritative pulse of a day that hasn't yet earned the title. You are instantly, miserably awake. Your mouth tastes of yesterday's coarse bread and the pervasive scent of wood smoke that never truly leaves the air. You swing your legs off a straw-stuffed pallet, your feet meeting a dirt floor that's always slightly damp. This is your alarm clock. And hitting snooze isn't an option. In fact, failing to respond to this summons could land you in the stocks, a public spectacle for the laziness you currently feel in your bones. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You fumble for your clothes, rough woolen hose, a tunic that smells faintly of the sheep it came from, and a thick leather jerkin. Dawn is still a theory, a faint, cold promise beyond the shutters. Outside your door, the world is a symphony of unsettling sounds, the distant, paranoid bark of a dog, the scuttle of things you hope are rats in the thatch, and the low, aching groan of a town still asleep. You are not headed to a peaceful meditation or a gentle warm-up. You are reporting for duty as a human loudspeaker, the living, breathing broadcast tower of a community where fewer than 1 in 10 can read a single word. The weight of that responsibility settles on you not as pride, but as a dull, familiar anxiety in your gut. Your voice, raw from yesterday's efforts, is the sole thread connecting the castle's lore to the butcher's ear, the king's decree to the baker's understanding. Forget Wi-Fi, forget printing presses. If information is to travel, it must ride on the breath from your lungs, shaped by your tongue, and hurled against the chaotic wall of 1,000 other lives being lived at full volume. You trudge through the mud-rutted lane, the cold seeping through your leather shoes. You pass shuttered windows, behind which families huddle for warmth, and you envy them their last moments of quiet. Your destination is the bailiff's courtyard, the administrative heart of this tangled knot of humanity. The main historical fact you're living is the sheer, staggering noise pollution of a medieval town. We picture quiet, quaint villages, but the reality was a near-constant cacophony, clanging hammers from the smithy, screeching saws from the carpenter's yard, the roar of the market, livestock, shouting vendors, and traveling preachers all competing for sonic space. Your job is to cut through all of that. Think of trying to shout a detailed legal document over the combined noise of a construction site, a busy farmer's market, and a heavy metal concert, all without a microphone. You probably won't survive this if you think it's just about having a loud voice. Some of the old masters swear the best way to prepare your throat isn't with water or herbs, but by slowly sucking on a smooth, clean stone from a riverbed first thing in the morning. They claim it wakes up the deep muscles and draws out the night dampness. You've tried it. It mostly makes you feel like you're going to choke, but in a town where medicine and superstition are roommates, you don't rule anything out. You push open the heavy oak gate to the courtyard. A few other grim-faced figures are already there, stamping their feet against the cold, their breath pluming in the torchlight. No one speaks. You're all conserving the instrument. In the center of the yard stands the master crier, a man whose face is a roadmap of a lifetime of shouting. His neck is thick as a bull's, and his voice, even when he whispers, sounds like gravel being dragged over stone. He looks you over, and his eyes hold no sympathy. They are gauging tools, assessing livestock. Historians still argue whether the role of town crier was a respected, official position or a task often foisted upon those who were marginally literate but physically robust, a sort of involuntary conscription for the loud. As you stand there shivering, feeling utterly disrespected, you suspect it might have been a miserable blend of both. The master gives a single, sharp nod. No good morning. No encouragement. The day begins. He picks up a mallet and strikes a wooden block. The sound is crisp, final. It means attention. It means the fragile silence is over. It means your voice, whether it's ready or not, now belongs to the town. You take a deep, frigid breath that burns your chest. This is the crucible. The first lesson isn't about power. It's about survival. And it starts now. You don't line up for swords or pikes. Your weapon is already sheathed in your throat. The master crier paces before your small, shivering group like a general surveying a tragically underwhelming battalion. This courtyard, the bailiff's personal patch of mud and stone, is your training ground, your vocal boot camp. Forget any romantic notion of practicing pretty poetry. This is about forging your natural voice into a tool of civic function, an instrument durable enough to weather scorn, distance, and a poorly aimed cabbage. The air itself feels like a resistant force, thick with morning chill and the lingering smell of damp earth and dung from the nearby stables. Each breath you take feels like an effort, a conscious drawing of fuel for a furnace that must burn all day. The master stops in front of you. His own voice, when he uses it, doesn't seem to come from his mouth. It seems to emanate from the ground beneath your feet, a low vibration you feel in your teeth. Open, he grunts. It's not a request. You open your mouth. He peers inside, as if examining a horse, then moves to the next man without a word. This is the assessment. He's looking for structural flaws, the set of your jaw, the condition of your teeth, the size of your palate. A mainstream historical fact you're experiencing firsthand. Town criers were often chosen for specific physical attributes beyond just a loud voice. Clear diction was paramount, so good teeth and an unimpeded airway were practical advantages in a time before dental care. A missing front tooth could turn a tax into a tax, and fiscal misunderstandings in the Middle Ages rarely ended with a friendly chat. Your first drill is deceptively simple and utterly humiliating. The master makes you all lie flat on your backs on the cold, unforgiving stones. Breathe, he commands. But not like a sleeping man. You must place a heavy, leather-bound ledger on your diaphragm, a tax record, of all things, and make the book rise with your inhale, hold it aloft, then lower it with a controlled, silent exhale that lasts a count of 20. This isn't yoga. This is mechanical engineering for your body. The book is a cruel teacher. It shows every hitch, every tremble, every short, panicked gasp. The man next to you wheezes, and the master's boot nudges his side, not roughly, but with the impersonal correction one gives a misfiring mechanism. Some masters believed in voice spirits that lived in the belly. They'd have you chant downward into a well, not to project upward, but to wake the spirits from their slumber. Lying here with a ledger trying to crush your spirit, you can almost believe it. Your diaphragm cramps, a sharp, startling pain. This is the foundation. Every shout that will later rattle windows begins here, in this terrible, quiet struggle against a book and your own feeble biology. After what feels like an hour, you're allowed to sit up, dizzy, the cold of the stone now deep in your bones. Phase 2 begins, the hum. Not a melodic hum, but a single, low-pitched note you must sustain until the master cuts you off. He walks among you, listening. He claps a hand over the mouth of a man whose hum is too nasal, cutting the sound dead. From here, the master growls, thumping his own sternum. The hum resumes, now a chorus of strained, bovine drones. The goal isn't beauty, it's consistency of vibration. You feel the buzz in your lips, your cheeks. You are tuning the instrument, and the master is the unforgiving tuner. Historians still argue whether this kind of formal, almost militaristic training was universal or if many criers were simply thrust into the role with a bell and a prayer. As your throat begins to ache from the sustained monotone, you suspect the truth is a spectrum, with some towns taking their auditory authority deadly seriously, and others letting the loudest drunk give it a go on market day. You are clearly in a town of the former variety. This is the crier's crucible, not fire, but control. It's the understanding that power is worthless without precision, and that the most important part of a shout is the breath you take before you ever make a sound. The master finally raises his hand. The humming stops. In the sudden silence, your ears ring. He looks at you, his expression unreadable. Again, he says. And you lie back down, reaching for the cold ledger, the town's weight already settling upon you. The ledger has taught your diaphragm to be a bellows. Now you must learn to be its master. The master crier doesn't believe in gentle theory. He believes in pressure. He lines you up against the courtyard's coldest, dampest wall, a surface that seems to suck the warmth from your spine. Before you, on a rickety trestle table, he places a single object, a tallow candle, its feeble flame guttering in the dawn breeze. You will not extinguish it, he states, his voice leaving no room for debate. You will make it dance. This is the bizarre, breath control practice passed down from rasper-voiced masters who viewed the voice as a semi-mystical force, a controlled storm contained within the ribs. The mainstream historical practice you're engaging in here is rooted in what would later be formalized as breath support for orators and singers, but for you, it's pure survival physics. The goal is to create a steady, laminar flow of air, a river, not a series of splashes, that can carry sound over distance without your voice breaking into a useless, breathy squeak. A crier who gasps for air mid-proclamation is a laughingstock. An authority cannot survive laughter. The first student steps up, takes a deep belly-expanding breath as drilled, and aims a steady AH at the flame. The candlelight flickers wildly, threatening to die, and his voice wavers after 3 seconds. The master's hand chops through the air. Stop. You are a gust. A gust is forgotten. Be a wind. A wind shapes stone. The metaphor is as rough as the man, but you grasp it. You're not trying to blow out the message, you're trying to carry it. When your turn comes, the candle flame seems an impossible target. You feel the absurdity of it. You're a grown person, being judged by a bit of fat on a string. You inhale, feeling the ledgerless weight in your gut, and begin your sustained tone. You focus not on your throat, but on that point of resistance below your ribs, slowly squeezing the air upward. You watch the flame. It dips, steadies, and then begins to lean, not flicker, leaning toward you as if drawn by the steady stream of your breath. The sound is steady, a boring, monolithic tone. It feels unnatural. Your body screams to take a quick gulp of air, but you maintain the pressure. The flame dances, a slow, rhythmic sway. 4-5 seconds. 10. Your vision starts to spot. At 15, the master nods. You release, gasping quietly through your nose as instructed, not your mouth, to avoid the undignified gulp. The flame snaps upright. A small, grudging triumph. An aspect of this training involves what the old-timers call the 4 winds exercise. Later, in a rare moment of non-hostile instruction, an older crier might take you aside and have you practice your sustained tone facing the 4 cardinal directions at different times of day. The belief is that the air itself has different qualities. The east wind at dawn is keen and carrying, the west wind at evening is thick and stubborn. It's meteorology blended with pure superstition, but you'll try anything that might give you an edge. Facing the stone wall, you're apparently practicing against the north wind, which is hard and rejecting. It certainly feels that way. After the candle test comes the straw. A single stalk of barley straw is pinned to the wall. From 6 paces back, you must use your breath stream to keep it pressed flat against the stone for a count of 10. This is about focus. The air must be a spear, not a cloud. You fail, repeatedly. The straw twitches and falls. Your fellow apprentices' attempts are no better. The courtyard fills with the sounds of strained, focused exhalations, a group of adults desperately huffing at a wall. It would be comical if the master's disapproving silence weren't so heavy. Historians still argue whether these specific, almost monastic breath control drills were documented in any formal Criers manual, or if they were simply part of an oral tradition of vocal craft, passed from master to apprentice like a trade secret. As you stand there, light-headed from controlled hyperventilation, you feel you are part of a lineage not of heralds, but of artisans, blacksmiths of sound, hammering your breath into a usable shape on the anvil of these ridiculous exercises. The breath is no longer just air. It is the foundation, the fuel, and the delivery system. The master finally calls a halt, your head swimming. He points to the well in the corner of the yard. Now, he says, make the water answer. You trudge over, knowing this next drill involves shouting downward into the dark, listening for your echo, and learning to pace your breath to match the well's depth. The crucible has no end, only deeper, stranger layers. Your voice is not your own. It is being rebuilt from the inside out, beginning with a single, stubborn stream of air aimed at a dancing flame. Your controlled breath is now a weapon, but it's useless if its report doesn't reach the back of the crowd. The master leads you out of the confined courtyard and into the town's main thoroughfare, which is just beginning to stir with the grim industry of dawn. This is where theory meets the chaotic, muddy reality of projection. You're not just learning to be loud, you're learning to be a human siege weapon for sound, battering against the distance and the din. Your first lesson in the volume dial of doom involves architecture. The master doesn't start you in the open street. He takes you to the town's central crossroads, where the gable end of the wool merchant's tall, timber-framed house creates a natural-sounding board. Stand here, he instructs, positioning you at a specific angle to the wooden wall. Now give me the market rules. When you speak normally, your voice is swallowed by the space. But when you angle your body, plant your feet, and direct your voice to strike the flat wooden surface, something magical happens. The sound doesn't just travel forward. It rebounds, amplified and clarified, shooting down the intersecting lanes. This is a mainstream historical fact of acoustic engineering they understood instinctively. Hard, flat surfaces were your allies. Stone walls, the side of the church, the cliff face of a wealthy merchant's house. These were your primitive amplifiers. A smart crier planned his route and his stopping points not just for crowd gathering, but for sonic advantage. The drill is exhausting. You recite the same dry list of market regulations. No butcher shall sell foul meat, no baker shall give short weight. Over and over, while the master walks further and further away. At 50 paces he cups his ear. At 70 he shakes his head. You adjust. You dig your heels in, engage the bellows of your diaphragm. Imagine your voice as a solid beam leaving your mouth and project. It's not a scream. A scream is all treble and strain, and it shatters. This is about pushing the fundamental chest-rattling core of your sound. You feel it vibrate in your own skull. Finally, at nearly 100 paces, the master gives a single sharp nod. The message has landed. Your throat feels scraped, but you've learned the first rule of the volume dial. It's not about raw force, it's about directed energy. Now comes the chaos test. The master takes you to the edge of the marketplace, where the early vendors are setting up. A blacksmith's forge is already roaring, his hammer creating a rhythmic, shattering clang that physically hurts your ears. A swineherd is driving his noisy charges toward the pen. Two fishwives are already arguing in piercing, crystalline shrieks. This is your enemy. The master points to the town well 20 paces away through this wall of noise. Tell that woman the water toll remains a penny per pail, he orders. The woman is drawing water her back to you. You take your breath and shout. Your words, which felt mighty against the merchant's wall, vanish into the metallic crash and animals squeal. The woman doesn't turn. You failed. This scenario involves a trick called throwing the stone. It's a mental trick. You don't just shout at the woman. You picture your voice as a physical object. A smooth, heavy stone. You don't hurl it in her general direction. You aim for a specific point just past her ear. Changes your focus. You plant, breathe, and project, imagining the arc of the stone over the blacksmith's clamor. The water toll. A penny per pail. This time the words cut through. The woman starts, turns, and gives you a sour look, but she heard. The master almost smiles. Almost. Historians still argue whether criers developed specific pitches or vocal tones that were more effective at cutting through certain types of ambient noise. A lower register for industrial din, a brighter tone for general crowd babble. As you move to your next location, the low hum of the chandlery where they're boiling tallow, you instinctively try to pitch your practice proclamation slightly lower, feeling for a resonance that won't compete with the constant, bubbling rumble. It's trial and error, a constant negotiation with your environment. The final test of the morning is the most disorienting, the alley drill. The master has you stand at the entrance of a narrow, winding alley, a canyon of wattle and daub. Your target is another apprentice standing at the far, crooked end, around a slight bend. Line of sight is broken. This is about projection around obstacles, making sound travel where light cannot. You learn to bounce your voice off the opposite wall, to ricochet it down the lane. Feels like shouting into a damp blanket, but you adjust your angle over and over. When the distant apprentice finally echoes the message back correctly, the gate locks at curfew. The victory is profound. You've learned that volume is a game of angles, surfaces, and mental trickery. Your voice is no longer just a biological function. It is a projectile you are learning to aim with devastating, town-wide accuracy. The dial isn't just turned up, it's been weaponized. Power is meaningless if it's just noise. Now, with your lungs forged into bellows and your projection shaped into a weapon, you enter the most painstaking phase, the sculpting of clarity. You return to the relative quiet of the bailiff's courtyard, but the task is no less brutal. The master sits on a stool, a sheaf of vellum in his hands, actual legal texts, dense with Latin terms and convoluted Saxon legalese. Your job is to turn this written gibberish into a crystal-clear chant that a drunken tanner, a harried housewife, and an illiterate ploughman can understand and remember. A misheard word isn't a trivial error here. Proclaim a tax as 2 pence on wool instead of 2 pence per bolt of wool, and you could incite a riot at the market. Mispronounce the name of a condemned man, and you might announce the wrong person's hanging. The stakes of diction are life, death, and public order. The drill is methodical and maddening. The master reads a phrase in a flat, bureaucratic mumble. Item, ordinatum est quod nullus ballesterius infra libertatum huius villi sigitas cum pinnis cupres uti presumat. It means something like, furthermore, it is ordained that no crossbowman within the liberty of this town shall presume to use arrows with copper fletchings. You must repeat it. Not in Latin. You must instantly translate it into the vernacular, and shape it. Hear ye. No crossbowman in this town may use arrows fletched with copper. But that's not enough. It must have a rhythm. It must stick. You try. The master stops you. Copper, he snaps. You said copper like a man with a mouthful of porridge. Corper. The P is a hammer strike. Hit it. Corper. You repeat, over-enunciating until your lips feel absurd. The mainstream historical fact you're embodying is the crier's role as a vital bridge between written law and oral culture. You are a transducer, converting the silent, complex symbols of authority into audible, memorable public code. Your clarity is the integrity of that conversion. The quirky tidbit for diction involves a bizarre practice some masters swear by called the pebble choir. To cure mumbling or lazy tongue work, they'd have you go to the riverbed, collect a handful of clean, small pebbles of different sizes, and put them in your mouth, not to swallow, you hope, while reciting your proclamations. The idea is to force your tongue, teeth, and lips to work with exaggerated precision to navigate around the stones and still produce intelligible sound. Spit the stones out, the theory goes, and your normal speech will feel impossibly clear and easy. You haven't been subjected to this yet, but you've seen the master eyeing the courtyard gravel with a thoughtful look that makes you nervous. Next comes pacing. Information must be parceled out in digestible chunks. The master has you chant the day's announcements to a rhythm he taps out with his stick on the flagstones. It's a slow, deliberate, marching cadence. Tap, 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 tap. The fair begins on the morrow, at the bell of prime. Each segment is a discrete packet. The pause between them is as important as the words themselves. It allows the listener to absorb one piece before the next arrives. You learn to use these pauses to take those stealthy, nasal breaths you practiced, so your delivery seems relentless, unstoppable, even as your lungs discreetly refuel. A crier who gasps for breath in the middle of a sentence sounds weak. A crier who uses a rhythmic pause sounds authoritative, deliberate. Historians still argue whether the distinctive, sing-song cadence of the town crier's delivery was a practical tool for memory and clarity, or if it borrowed consciously from the rhythmic patterns of church liturgy and monastic chant, lending the secular announcements a sense of ritualistic authority. As you fall into the stick-tapped rhythm, the phrases beginning to feel less like speech and more like a recited incantation, you feel the truth is both. The rhythm makes it memorable for you and your audience, and that same rhythm echoes the solemn cadences from the abbey, subtly dressing the mayor's new sanitation decree in the clothes of Holy Writ. The final test of the session is the wind and rain simulation. Two apprentices stand at either side of you, one vigorously shaking a sheet of leather, the wind, the other flicking water from a bucket onto a taut parchment, the rain. You must deliver a complicated proclamation about bridge repairs and diverted traffic, fighting to keep your consonants crisp and your volume steady against the manufactured storm. A sloppy S becomes a wet hiss, a lazy T is lost to the rattling leather. You drill until your words are armored, each plosive and fricative a distinct, shielded unit in your auditory army. Clarity, you learn, is not the absence of noise. It is the victory over it. And by the time the master dismisses you, your jaw aches, your tongue feels like a piece of overworked meat, but the words you speak, even in a whisper, seem to hang in the air, sharp and defined as chiseled stone. The vellum is taken away. You will not be allowed to read from a script on your rounds. The master's next lesson is perhaps the most intimidating of all. You must build a fortress for words inside your own mind. This is the art of memory, and for a town crier, it's not an intellectual exercise. It's the scaffold that holds your entire professional life aloft. A forgotten line isn't an embarrassment, it's a dereliction of duty that could see you fined or worse. You are about to construct a memory palace, and you will shout your way through its halls. The mainstream historical technique you're employing is the method of Loki, the method of places, used since antiquity by orators and scholars. But for you, it's stripped of all scholarly pretense. The master doesn't call it that. He calls it walking the route in your noggin. He starts with something simple, the weekly market regulations, a list of 15 specific rules. You don't remember the list. he grumbles. You remember a walk from your bed to the well. You put each rule on a thing you see. So, you close your eyes. In your mind, you rise from your pallet. Rule 1, no trading before the bell. You touch the cold hearthstone. Rule 2, no sale of green firewood. You open your creaky door. Rule 3, stalls must be 3 paces apart. You step into the lane, your foot slipping in mud by the midden heap. Rule 4, butchers must keep offal in sealed barrels. Each rule is viscerally tied to a location on a familiar path. The quirkier, fringe element whispered by the older criers involves making these mental images violently absurd to make them stick. For Rule 7, baker's loaves must match the sample weight. You don't just picture the baker's stall. You picture the baker, Godfrey, wrestling a giant, loaf-shaped stone onto his scales, his face purple with strain. The more ludicrous, the more unforgettable. This is your secret. Your mind is a gallery of the bizarre, where civic law is enacted by ridiculous phantoms. Now, the master escalates. He gives you the full text of a new proclamation from the Lord of the Manor, a change in harvest tithes, a reminder of boon work obligations, a new tax on milled flour, and the announcement of a court date, a solid 400 words of dense, procedural text. Your stomach clenches. He gives you an hour to build your house. You pace the courtyard, muttering, assigning each clause to a feature of the bailiff's own hall. The massive iron hinge on the door becomes the iron bond of the tithe. The soot stain above the fireplace, shaped vaguely like a goat, becomes the devil of shirked boon work. The chipped flagstone by the trestle table is the broken promise of the mill tax. You walk the real space, touching each spot, depositing the words there. Historians still argue whether the prodigious memories attributed to medieval criers were a natural gift or a universally trained skill, and whether the common folk believed such perfect recall was a form of low magic. As you implant a clause about swine pannage into a crack in the wall, you feel it's a grueling, unmagical craft, the mental equivalent of a scribe's labor, but with no parchment to correct. The test is brutal. The master makes you stand in the center of the courtyard, eyes closed. Proclaim it, he orders. You begin your mental walk. You step to the door hinge. Hear ye. The tithe of every 10th sheaf is now to be paid at the manor granary, not at Tea Field's edge. You tone, walking to the soot stain. And any man who fails to present 4 boon work on Tea Saint's Day shall forfeit a day's wage. Your voice is not just reciting, it's guided on a tour through the architecture of your own making. You retrieve the words from their resting places. One clause about court appeals, which you'd placed on a dusty sconce, wavers. You mentally blow the dust off. The words come. You complete the proclamation without a single stumble. The silence afterward is profound. But the master isn't done. He now introduces interference. As you begin to recite a different text from your new mental palace, this one built in the parish church, 2 other apprentices start shouting random numbers and names at you. This is the reality of the street. Distraction, heckling, chaos. You must keep walking your silent, internal route, ignoring the phantom noise, pulling each phrase from its specific, absurd anchor. It's a duel of attention. Your voice remains steady, a monotone river flowing through a storm of nonsense. When you finish, sweat is beading on your temples. The mental effort is more exhausting than the projection. Your memory palace stands. It is a fortress, yes, but one you must now maintain, forever adding new wings and bizarre furniture for every new decree that comes from the castle. Your mind is no longer a private space, it is the town's most essential public record. Possessing a weapon and knowing how to aim it is one thing. Wielding it through an entire battle is another. Your voice, now a controlled, precise, memorized instrument, must be tested for endurance. The master declares the theoretical drill's over. Now, he says, his gravelly voice holding a hint of grim relish, you walk the route. This is the stamina gauntlet, a full, brutal simulation of your daily duties, from the first cry at the market cross to the last announcement at the town gate at dusk. You will not be proclaiming to silence. You will be fighting the town itself for its own attention. Your route is a circuit of the bailiff's courtyard and its adjacent buildings, but the master and other apprentices transform it into a hellscape of medieval audio. One man stands furiously clanging a pot with a spoon, the ubiquitous blacksmith. Another drags a sack of stones over cobbles, the rumble of cart traffic. Two more engage in a loud, fake argument about the price of eels, the standard market babble. A boy shakes a sheet of tin to simulate the clatter of a loom from a weaver's workshop. This is your new normal. You must project your memorized proclamations not across a quiet field, but through this engineered cacophony. The mainstream historical reality you're facing is the sheer physical toll of the job. Criers were expected to be on their feet for hours, often covering miles in a day, their voices working constantly against an environment designed to destroy sound. There were no throat lozenges, no voice coaches on retainer. Your stamina was your career. You begin at the market cross, a chalk X on the flagstones. You ring your practice bell, a heavy, blunt thing that already makes your forearm ache. The simulated noise dips slightly. You take your breath and launch into the day's first announcement, a list of tolls for the upcoming bridge. You get 3 sentences in before the blacksmith increases his clanging tempo, a defiant challenge. Your instinct is to shout louder, to fight force with force. You do, and by the 5th sentence, you feel a familiar, hot scratch in the back of your throat, the first warning of vocal fraying. You failed the first test. The master stops the noise. You are not a dog barking at a louder dog, he says, without malice. You are the moon. The dogs bark, but the moon is steady. Find the tone that rises above, not the shout that fights against. You reset. This time, as the cacophony resumes, you don't push for sheer decibels. You focus on the core resonance you built with the candle and the straw. You lean into the chest voice, the one that vibrates your sternum, letting it carry the words like a deep drumbeat under the high-pitched clatter. It works. The words cut through, not by overpowering the noise, but by existing on a different, more penetrating frequency. You finish the tolls. Your throat is tired, but not shredded. Now you must move. The master points you to the next stop, the church steps, the courtyard well. As you walk the 20 paces, the noise follows you, a moving blanket of discord. This is the second lesson. Stamina isn't just about sustained volume, it's about recovery on the move. You learn to use the walking moments not to rest your voice, but to actively soothe the mechanism. You practice the silent breath drills, inhaling slowly through your nose, letting the air cool the strained tissues. You roll your shoulders, releasing tension that migrates to your larynx. Always carry a small, smooth apple. Not necessarily to eat, but to hold in the hand not carrying the bell. The repetitive, subconscious motion of rolling it in your palm is said to ground the humors, and prevent the voice from rising into the head and becoming shrill. You don't have an apple, but you ball your fist, mimicking the motion. The psychological focus is oddly steadying. At the well, you must announce the curfew for apprentices. The loom is clattering, and the cart rumble is loud. You plant, breathe, and use your projected, resonant tone. Halfway through, your voice wants to crack. You deploy the stealth pause, using the rhythmic break to take a microgulp of air through your mouth, masking it as dramatic emphasis. And any found abroad, after the last bell, shall answer to the guildmaster. You make it. The scratch is back, but deeper, a weariness in the fabric of your voice. Historians still argue whether criers worked in shifts or if a single individual was expected to cover an entire town's announcements, with the larger burden naturally falling on younger, stronger vocal cords. As you drag yourself to your third and fourth simulated stops, the butcher's row and the tanner's stink, your voice now a rough instrument, you desperately hope for a shift system. The final stop is the town gate. You are flagging. The noisemakers, sensing weakness, redouble their efforts. Your proclamation is the longest, the complete docket for tomorrow's manor court. It's a list of names, fines, and complaints. Your memory palace is a blur. You cling to the absurd images, the man with the turnip for a head who owes a debt, the woman chasing a chicken that represents a nuisance complaint. You push the words out. They are no longer crisp. They are gravelly, but they are clear and, most importantly, they are complete. The master raises his hand. The hellish symphony stops. The sudden silence rings louder than the noise. He looks at you, nods once. Tomorrow, he says, you do it again. The gauntlet is not a test you pass. It is a condition you endure. Your voice has survived its first battle. But the war is every day, for as long as your lungs and throat hold out. You have survived the gauntlet with your voice intact, more or less. Now you are issued your kit. This isn't ceremonial, it's the practical toolbox that will make the daily war winnable. The master presents them to you on the same trestle table, each item looking mundane but holding profound significance. These are the extensions of your body, the physical objects that complete the human broadcast system. First, the bell. It's not the gentle, tinkling thing you might imagine. This is a heavy, cast-iron monster with a worn wooden handle, its surface pitted and dark. The master hands it to you. The weight is immediate, a solid, wrist-straining pull. This bell is your auditory flag, your signal to clear the channel. The mainstream historical fact here is its legal function. The sound of the official town crier's bell created a zone of compulsory attention. To ignore it, to continue shouting over it, could be considered a breach of the peace. You practice the ring, not a frantic jangling, but a series of deliberate, spaced, resonant brong. Brong. Brong strokes. 3 is standard for a general announcement. A rapid, continuous peal signals immediate danger, like fire or invasion. You learn the language of the bell before you utter a single word. Its sound must travel farther than your voice can, a metallic herald that prepares the air for your message. Next, the ledger. This is the twin to the one used to crush your diaphragm. It's a thick, leather-bound book, its pages filled with a messy scroll of past proclamations, tax rates, and bylaws. You will not read from it on the street, but it is your Bible, your reference, your proof. If a merchant disputes the toll you just announced, you can point to the ordinance, written here, with the bailiff's seal. Its physical presence is a symbol of authority, a direct link to the written word that underpins your spoken one. Carrying it also gives your free hand something heavy to do, counterbalancing the bell, completing the official posture. Then, the surprises. The master produces a small, stained leather pouch. For the throat, he grunts, tossing it to you. Inside is a lump of ordinary-looking honeycomb, wrapped in a cloth. This is the first-line remedy, the PG-13 approved tool. Honey to soothe, the comb itself to make you salivate, combating the dry mouth of constant projection. But as he turns away, an older apprentice nudges you and nods toward the pouch with a raised eyebrow. The real kit, the fringe apothecary, is assembled in secret, and its ingredients are not for the faint of heart. Later, in a shadowy corner, he whispers the recipes: a tea of boiled licorice root and slippery elm bark, the tame option; a gargle of vinegar and salt to toughen the cords, the painful option; and the truly bizarre throat wrap, a poultice of rendered badger fat, mustard seed, and a single crumbled earthworm, dried and powdered, said to restore elasticity after a particularly brutal day. You try not to gag. Historians still argue whether such folk remedies had any genuine therapeutic effect or were purely placebo, bolstered by the desperate need of men whose livelihoods literally hung by a vocal cord. Given the alternative, voicelessness and poverty, you'd probably try the earthworm. The final item isn't given, but shown, the coat. Or more specifically, the official tabard or armband denoting your office. In some towns, it's a brightly colored coat with the town's crest. Here, it's a simple but sturdy armband of dyed wool, stamped with the bailiff's mark. This is not for warmth or fashion. This is your shield. It marks you as an extension of the law, not just a loud person. That armband is what, theoretically, stops the hurled rotten turnip from becoming a hurled knife. It commands a modicum of respect, or at least a pause in the harassment. You learn to put it on last, a ritual of assuming the role. The clothes you wear beneath are chosen for durability and ease of movement, but this strip of cloth is the uniform that transforms you from a man with a loud voice into the town crier. Your kit complete, you feel the weight of the office in a new, physical way. The bell hangs heavy at your side, the ledger tucks under your arm, the secret pouch sits awkwardly in your belt. These objects are now part of your anatomy. The master has you walk a final, quiet lap of the courtyard, bell in one hand, ledger in the other, getting used to the balance, to the way they alter your gait and your posture. You are no longer just a person. You are a mobile, noise-making, law-carrying unit. The tools feel alien, clumsy. But with them, you are official. The next time you face the stamina gauntlet, you won't just be a voice fighting noise. You will be the bell, the book, and the badge, fighting for order in the beautiful, terrible chaos of your town. The controlled chaos of the courtyard simulation was one thing. Now you must learn that the town itself is a living, breathing entity with a terrible voice of its own, and it will try to drown you. The weather isn't scenery. It's an active, malevolent participant in your daily drama. Your training shifts to battling the elements, learning to make your voice not just clear and loud but weatherproof. Your first true adversary is the wind. Not a breeze, but the kind of howling, capricious gale that whips down the narrow streets like a river in spate, stealing hats, signs, and sanity. The master waits for such a day. When it comes, he takes you to the lee side of the church, where the wind whips around the corner in unpredictable, buffeting gusts. Proclaim the assize of ale, he orders, his own words snatched and torn by the gale. This is a mainstream historical nightmare for criers. Delivering price controls on essentials during bad weather when tempers and winds are high. You plant your feet wider, digging in against the push. You quickly learn that shouting into the wind is futile. It shoves your words back down your throat. You must turn your body, using the solid wall of the church as a backstop, and project across the wind's path, letting it carry your voice sideways to the crowd huddled against the buildings. It's a geometry of survival. The wind finds every gap in your diction, turning ale into ale, and penny into b. You must over-enunciate, hammering the consonants so they punch through the roar. Your throat works double time, and you understand why the crier's pouch might contain a lump of grease. Some swore by a dab of rendered sheep fat on the lips to keep them from chapping and sticking in the wind, a quirky, desperate bit of weatherproofing. Next is the rain. A steady, cold drizzle is the worst. It doesn't have the dramatic fury of the wind, but it is a relentless, dampening blanket. It deadens sound. It soaks your ledger, making the pages a pulpy mess. It mats your hair, drips off your nose, and chills you to the core, tightening your chest and constricting your breath. The master makes you stand in the open during a spring shower. Announce the muster for the town watch, he says from the relative dryness of the eaves. Your bell's ring sounds dull, thudding. Your voice wants to retreat into your chest to stay warm. You learn to fight the instinct to hunch. You must stand even taller, open your chest wider, to compensate for the way the falling water absorbs the higher frequencies of your voice. You lean even more on the low, resonant fundamentals you drilled, the ones that rumble through the damp air. You also learn a fringe trick passed down. Before a long announcement in the rain, you quietly hum the lowest note you can manage, feeling the vibration in your lips and teeth. This primes the pump, warming up the vocal cords that the cold damp wants to stiffen into uselessness. Feels silly, a low drone lost in the patter, but the difference in that first clear, strong word is noticeable. The final elemental foe is the cold. Not just morning chill, but the bone-deep, iron-hard cold of a winter's day. This enemy works from the inside. It tightens your throat, makes your lungs ache with each inhale, and turns your breath into a visible plume that seems to steal the very sound from you. The cold makes your teeth want to chatter, ruining diction. The master's remedy is brutal but effective. The pre-shout sprint. Before you take your position at the market cross on a freezing day, you are to jog, not walk, the last 100 paces of your approach. It gets your blood pounding, warms your core, and loosens the muscles around your voice box. It's a calculated risk. You arrive slightly breathless, but with a body humming with heat, ready to be converted into sound. The cold also affects your audience. They are huddled, distracted, ears tucked into collars. You must make your words not just heard but felt. You use more pauses, letting the importance of the message hang in the frosty air. You might repeat the key line, "The well on High Street is frozen. Use the well at the forge." Twice, the repetition fighting its way into numb, preoccupied minds. Historians still argue whether town criers were exempted from certain outdoor duties in the most extreme weather, or if the relentless need for information flow meant the show always had to go on, regardless of blizzard or downpour. As you stand in the lashing rain, your tabard soaked through and your voice growing hoarse against the elements, you feel in your bones that the decree from the warm, dry castle knew no season. Your voice is the town's constant. And so, you learn to be a constant, against the wind that would silence you, the rain that would muffle you, and the cold that would freeze you into silence. You become a student of the sky, a barometer with a bell, reading the weather not for small talk, but for tactical advantage in the endless battle to be heard. The weather is an impersonal foe. Your audience, however, is not. The master now engineers the most psychologically grueling test yet, the hostile audience. In the relative safety of the courtyard, your fellow apprentices transform. They are no longer fellow sufferers. They become the drunks, the hecklers, the aggrieved taxpayers, the sneering nobles, and the simply bored citizens who form the gauntlet of human reaction you must run daily. Your training in composure begins, and it has nothing to do with your voice, and everything to do with your face, your posture, and the unbreakable wall you must build behind your eyes. The first scenario is simple mockery. As you begin to announce a new tax on hearths, a deeply unpopular one, the crowd begins to laugh. Not a gentle chuckle, but a loud, derisive cackle aimed directly at you. Your face flushes hot. The instinct is to falter, to shrink, to let your voice waver with shame. The master's earlier lesson echoes. You are the moon. You are not reacting to them, they are reacting to the message, and you are merely its conduit. You fix your gaze on a point just above their heads, on the imaginary steeple of the church in the distance. You do not smile. You do not scowl. You maintain the same flat, imperious expression you'd use on a calm day. Your voice continues, steady and rhythmical, the cadence unbroken by their noise. The laughter dies out, defeated by your indifference. This is a mainstream historical necessity, the crier's absolute neutrality. You are the mouthpiece of authority, and showing personal emotion, anger, embarrassment, even sympathy, undermines the message's impersonal power. You are a human megaphone, and megaphones don't get offended. Next, the projectile. An apprentice, hidden, lobs a soft clod of date, a stand-in for the classic rotten vegetable, that thuds against your chest. The physical shock is real. It breaks your concentration for a split second. The master watches, hawk-like. The trick, you learn, is not to flinch before the next one. You must absorb the impact without breaking your recitation, without even looking down at the stain on your tabard. You continue announcing the half-tax, your voice adopting an even colder, more metallic tone, as if the attempt at interruption only makes the law more ironclad. Some swore that eating a very plain, dry oat cake before a difficult announcement created a psychological armor. It wasn't about nutrition, it was about the feeling of dull, heavy fullness in the gut, a sensation that grounded you and made external distractions feel trivial, silly. You try to summon that feeling now. The next clod misses. You don't acknowledge it. The third test is the direct confrontational heckle. A burly apprentice steps forward, playing a disgruntled butcher, and shouts directly into your face, trying to drown you out. The bailiff can stuff his tax. We'll not pay for the air in our own homes. His spittle sprays your cheek. This is the ultimate test of authority. You do not step back. You do not shout him down. You simply pause. You let his shout hang and dissipate in the sudden, shocking silence you have created by stopping. You turn your head slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time. Your expression is not one of anger, but of detached, almost bored acknowledgement, as if he were a minor barking dog. Then, you deliberately turn your head back to your middle distance point, take your rhythmic pause breath, and continue the proclamation exactly where you left off, as if he had never spoken. This silent dismissal is more powerful than any retort. It asserts that the law's voice is the only one that matters in this transaction. Historians still argue whether criers were ever physically protected by guards or if their symbolic role was their only shield, relying on a medieval understanding of sacrosanct office to keep them safe. As the heckler's face reddens with frustration at being ignored, you understand it's a fragile shield, woven from sheer, unflinching performance. The final audience test is the most chilling, the noble's glare. An apprentice, draped in a borrowed dark cloak, plays the part of a local knight or the bailiff's own steward. He stands, arms crossed, expressionless, listening as you announce a law that he himself might find inconvenient or taxing. His gaze is not angry, it is evaluative, cold, penetrating. He is assessing your performance, your loyalty, your very worth. This is the pressure that comes not from below, but from above. You must deliver the proclamation with the same force and clarity as for the commoners, but with an extra layer of unshakable respect woven into your tone, not fawning, but firm, confirming that the authority you channel flows directly from him and his class. To waver under this gaze is to show the weakness of the law itself. Your voice must become an instrument of chilling, impersonal authority, and for this noble spectator, you must prove you can be its perfect, unthinking vessel. You finish. The noble apprentice gives the faintest, almost imperceptible nod. It's not praise. It's a verification of function. You have passed. You have learned that your greatest tool isn't your lungs, but your composure. The hostile audience cannot break what does not react. You are becoming a wall, and your voice is the law written upon it. You have the pieces, the breath, the volume, the clarity, the memory, the stamina, the tools, the weatherproofing, the composure. Now, the master teaches you to assemble them into a single, devastatingly effective event, the proclamation itself. This is no longer about isolated skills. This is choreography. This is the anatomy of the perfect cry, from the first metallic resonance to the final, echoing word that sends the crowd dispersing, the news lodged firmly in their minds. It begins, always, with the stance. You learn to plant your feet shoulder width, not on flat ground, but with one foot slightly behind the other, braced against an expected shove or a gust of wind. You hold your ledger in the crook of your left arm, close to your body, a solid weight that anchors you. Your right hand grips the bell at your side. Your posture is erect, chin level, not tilted up. Tilting up stretches the throat and reduces power. You are a column, a conduit. Then, the silence. Before a single ring, you must create a pocket of anticipation. You do not rush. You stand at your chosen spot, the market cross, the church steps, the conduit, and you simply exist in the space for 3 full breaths. Your eyes sweep the area, not making contact, but establishing presence. This silent claim of territory is the first, wordless part of the proclamation. The crowd's babble may not fully cease, but it dips, curiosity piqued by the sudden, statuesque figure in the official armband. Now, the bell. You raise it not with a flourish, but with a deliberate, almost slow-motion certainty. The first ring is not the loudest. It is a statement of intent. Brong. You let the sound decay completely in the air. The second ring is identical in tempo, but louder, as you put your shoulder into it. Brong. By now, conversations have stopped. Faces turn. The third ring is the final period on the sentence of silence. Brong. You lower the bell, but your arm remains poised. The silence you have carved out now belongs to you. This mainstream historical ritual was legally significant. The triple ring was a universally recognized signal that a binding official announcement was imminent, different from the single bell of a leper or the frantic peals of alarm. Into that silence, you drop the cry. Not immediately. You take one of your deep, ledger-raised breaths, audible in the quiet. Then it comes, O-Y-E, oh yeah, O-Y-E-A, or hear Y-E, hear ye, hear ye. This is the vocal hook, the ancient formula that screams important information follows. It's always in triplicate, mirroring the bell. The master drills you on this opening cry until it is flawless, not a question, not a plea, but a threefold command that brooks no interruption. It must land like 3 hammer blows on the anvil of the crowd's attention. The body of the announcement follows, delivered in the rhythmic cadence you've mastered. But now you learn the strategic pause. Not just for breath, but for emphasis. The bailiff ordains. Pause, eyes sweep the crowd, that all dogs found unleashed. Pause, shall be impounded. Each pause lets the preceding clause sink in, lets the consequence hover in the air. It also allows you to check that you still have the crowd's ear, to make micro-adjustments for a cart rattling past in the distance. You learn to point your voice to different sections of the gathering during these pauses, turning your torso slightly left, then right, ensuring no one is left out. It's a subtle dance, a slow panning of your sonic spotlight. Some called the shadow word. For particularly complex or unpopular announcements, an old crier might teach you to mentally bury a softer, simpler synonym just behind the official term as you speak it, aiming to plant the meaning subliminally in illiterate minds. While proclaiming conscription for the Levi, you might mentally emphasize the feeling of soldiers in your tone. It's a psychological trick, a whisper within a shout. Finally, the close. You end not with a fading tone, but with a final, firm, declarative phrase, God save the king, or so proclaims the bailiff. This is the official seal, the vocal equivalent of a stamp hitting wax. It signals indisputable finality. The announcement is over. The law is now in effect. Immediately after, you break stance. You move, either to ring the bell again and repeat the cry for a new group arriving, or you simply walk away, your job done. The transition from absolute, charged authority back to being just a man walking down the street is jarring, and you must master it. Historians still argue whether the specific phrases and rhythms varied dramatically from region to region, forming distinct schools of crying, or if the need for universal understanding created a remarkably consistent pattern across Christendom. As you drill the full sequence, stance, silence, bell, cry, body, close, over and over until it is a single, unthinking muscle memory, you feel you are learning a sacred, secular liturgy. Each proclamation is a performance, a ritual of power, and you are its high priest, following a script written not on vellum, but in the very expectations of the crowd. Your voice is now the needle, and the town is the gramophone record. You have learned precisely how to drop it to make the law play. No matter how perfect the technique, the instrument will fail. The flesh is weak, and you have been hammering yours with the force of a siege engine. The master, in a rare moment that almost approaches sympathy, now teaches you vocal first aid. This is the grim, pragmatic art of repair, of patching the leaks in your personal bellows so you can limp through the rest of your route, or survive to shout another day. The remedies range from the sensible to the surreal, a testament to the sheer, desperate need to keep the words flowing. The first sign of trouble is the scratch. A hot, gritty feeling at the back of your throat, as if you've swallowed dust. This is the early warning. The mainstream, PG-13 response is immediate and simple: stop talking. But you can't. You're in the middle of the fish market. So you deploy the honey. The lump from your pouch goes into your cheek, tucked between teeth and gum. You let the sweetness coat and soothe, and the act of salivating provides much-needed lubrication. You subtly adjust your delivery, leaning even more on the breath-supported, low resonance to spare the strained vocal folds. You might skip a non-essential repetition. It's a tactical retreat. When the scratch deepens into the rasp, a gravelly vibration that steals your clarity, you escalate. This is where the folk apothecary opens its bizarre cabinet. Between cries, you might duck into an alley and take a swig from your secret flask, not of ale, but of a grim tea steeped from licorice root, marshmallow, the actual plant, and a generous dollop of that honey, all steeped in warm, not hot, water. It feels like swallowing slimy, sweet mud. It works, a little. The fringe, desperate times remedy whispered about involves a gargle of warm salt water and vinegar. It's excruciating, astringent and burning, said to shrink and toughen the swollen tissues. You try it once. Your eyes water, and your throat feels scoured, but the raw inflammation does seem to recede slightly, replaced by a numb, leathery feeling. Historians still argue whether any of these herbal or acidic remedies had genuine anti-inflammatory properties or if they were purely palliative, their effectiveness rooted in the placebo of doing something when your livelihood is literally disappearing into a hoarse whisper. Then comes the break. The moment your voice simply abandons you mid-proclamation, cracking into a humiliating, breathy squeak or disappearing entirely into a painful whisper. This is a crisis. The show cannot stop. Here, you must rely on pure technique and theater. You instantly drop your volume by half, but you lean into the rhythmic cadence and the power of your stance and bell. You become a pantomime of authority, your physical presence and the stark clarity of your remaining diction carrying the weight your voice cannot. You might point emphatically to the ledger under your arm, the physical source of the truth you can no longer shout. It's a terrifying bluff, and it only works if your composure is absolute. The crowd, seeing the official figure persevering in silent suffering, often grows quieter to hear the strained words, perversely giving you the auditory space you need. After such a catastrophe, the recovery is critical. The master teaches you the silent night rule. For every hour you shouted in distress, you must spend 2 in absolute silence. This means gestures, written notes, pointed glares. No whispering. Whispering is worse than shouting. It grates the chords together. You might be seen wearing a strip of linen soaked in a poultice, the infamous throat wrap. The less said about its potential ingredients, remember the badger fat and earthworm, the better. The goal is heat, moisture, and rest. You also learn the steam cave method, leaning your head over a pot of steaming water with a cloth draped over you, inhaling the warm, damp air, feeling it seep into the ragged edges of your voice. It's a solitary, strange ritual, you sitting like a penitent over a cauldron, but the relief is tangible. The final, grim lesson is about the permanent loss. Sometimes, the voice doesn't come back fully. It gains a permanent rasp, a lowered range, a vulnerability to the cold. This is the crier's occupational hazard, the scar of the profession. The master's own voice is a testament to it. You learn to adapt, to find the new, narrower sweet spot in your damaged instrument and project from there. Your voice becomes a historical document in itself, its very texture speaking of miles walked and words hurled against the gales. Some retired criers, their voices gone to ghostly whispers, were set to find work as knellers or professional mourners, where a soft, raspy dirge was more appropriate than a clarion cry. Your voice is a tool, a weapon, and a consumable resource. And like any resource in a medieval town, you learn to conserve it, repair it with whatever is at hand, and use its very degradation as a badge of hard-won, painful experience. You have mastered your voice, and your voice has mastered the crowd. But there is another language you must become fluent in, one that speaks before you open your mouth, the language of the bell. You thought it was just a tool for getting attention, a noisy prelude. The master corrects you with a grim finality that chills you more than the dawn damp. The bell, he says, holding the cold iron up, is not your servant. It is your partner. And its tongue speaks law. He teaches you the codes. This is a mainstream historical fact embedded in town ordinances. Specific bell patterns carried specific, legally binding meanings. Your voice announces the particulars, but the bell declares the category, priming the populace for the emotional and practical weight of what's to come. A rapid, continuous, frenzied pealing, the tocsin, means only one thing: dire emergency. Fire. Invasion. Flood. It commands immediate action, not listening. You drill this only once, the sound so alarming it brings the bailiff himself to the courtyard window, scowling. But it's the subtler distinctions that form your daily grammar. The 3 measured, spaced rings for a standard proclamation, that's your bread and butter. But what about 2 rings, a pause, then a third? In some towns, that signified a civic celebration or market day announcement, something joyous or profitable. Here, the master explains, it means a public punishment announcement, a whipping, a stint in the stocks, a hanging. The altered pattern injects a note of solemn dread, filtering the crowd's expectation from mundane to grim before you cry oh yes. Then there is the single, deep, mournful toll, repeated at slow, walking intervals. The death knell. But when you ring it, it is not for a private passing. It is for a public figure, the lord of the manor, the bishop, the mayor. And it is your duty to follow that somber, metallic heartbeat with the formal announcement of the death and the details of succession. Your voice for this must drop in pitch and slow even beyond your normal cadence, becoming a vocal shroud. The bell has done half the emotional work. You must finish it with gravitas. Old criers whisper of times when, upon cleaning or repairing a town's bell, they found strange markings inside the casting, crude runes, crosses, even tiny metal charms sealed within. The belief was that a bell's voice could ward off evil spirits or pestilence that might travel on the wind, and that blessing the bell blessed the news it introduced. You examine your own practice bell, wondering if its dull tone is due to poor iron or a lack of sanctity. The master now runs you through drills that are all bell and no voice. He calls out a scenario. Plague quarantine order. Your hands must instantly find the rhythm, not the panic of the toxin, but a severe, repeating pattern of 2 sharp rings, a long pause, then 2 more, a sound of unyielding, isolating authority. Wedding of the bailiff's daughter. A lighter, quicker, almost melodic triplet pattern. Lost child. A distinctive, alternating high-low ringing, designed to cut through general noise with a unique, concerning signature. Your arm aches, but your mind learns. The bell is no longer just a noise maker, it is a semantic instrument. Historians still argue whether these codes were remarkably consistent across medieval Europe or if every town developed its own idiosyncratic sonic dialect, leading to confusion for travelers. As you practice, you realize your town's bell language is as particular as its accent. A man from the next shire might understand your words, but the preliminary rings might leave him braced for a feast when he's about to hear a death sentence. The final lesson is the most solemn. The master has you practice the sequence for announcing your own death. It's a practical necessity. If you are killed in a riot, die of plague, or drop dead from a boast vessel mid-proclamation, the town must still know, and a new crier must be appointed. The bell pattern for this is the standard triple ring, but your successor, finding your body, would ring it with a slight hesitancy, a subtle drag on the 3rd ring, a telltale sign for those who know the code that the crier himself is the subject of the news. It's a morbid, humbling drill. It underscores the ultimate truth: you are temporary. The office is permanent. The bell's language will outlive your voice. The iron tongue will speak, with or without you. Your job is to learn its vocabulary so completely that, when you ring, you are not a man shaking a metal object. You and the bell are a single entity, speaking law into the air in a language of vibration and dread, joy and order, written in sound long before a single human syllable is formed. All your training converges on this, the heaviest duty, the delivery of darkness. The master's demeanor shifts from harsh instructor to grim priest. He is no longer teaching you to be a channel for information, but a conduit for fate. You are to learn how to proclaim death sentences, public shaming, and the outcomes of trials that strip men of property, limb, or life. This is where your voice must shed its last vestige of humanity and become the cold, clear instrument of the scaffold. You are given the text. It is always the same format, a brutal liturgy. It begins not with "Oh yes," but with a longer, more portentous phrase. By order of the bailiff and the court of this town, let all persons gather and hear the judgment of this court upon the soul of... And then the name. The master makes you practice the name alone first. John Thatcher. You say it flatly. No, the master corrects, his own voice a tomb door creak. It is not just a name. It is a name that will cease to be. Say it as a thing already gone. John Thatcher. You hear the difference. The slight pause, the hollow resonance on the surname. You are not identifying a man. You are etching his name on a headstone with sound. The mainstream historical weight you carry is the concept of public justice. The punishment was not just for the criminal. It was a spectacle for the community, a reinforcement of the social order. Your voice is the herald of that spectacle, and its tone sets the stage. There must be no pity, no anger, no relish. Any emotion would make the proceeding about you or about the condemned, and not about the impersonal, terrifying machinery of the law. You drill until your recitation of crimes and sentences is as emotionless as a man reading a list of market prices for turnips. For the crime of theft, the loss of his right hand. For the crime of blasphemy, the branding of his forehead. For the crime of murder, to be taken thence to the place of execution, and there to be hanged by the neck until he is dead. The secret some old criers carried. The merciful mispronunciation. On the morning of an execution, if the condemned had shown particular repentance or if the crier knew the family, he might, when announcing the name, ever so slightly slur or soften a consonant. A tiny, deniable act of grace. Not enough to change the name, but enough to perhaps, in the ears of a grieving mother, make the formal proclamation sound less final, as if the law itself had stumbled over the reality of taking her son. It is a dangerous personal gamble. The master does not teach this. He would call it a weakness. But you hear of it in whispers, a ghost of compassion in a ghostly trade. The hardest proclamation is not for an execution, but for a public shaming. To stand before a crowd and detail the adulterous affair of a neighbor, the financial cheating of a once respected merchant, or the cowardice of a watchman. Here the crowd is not solemn, it is ravenous for scandal. Your voice must not feed that hunger. It must remain dispassionate, turning salacious details into dry facts, robbing the spectacle of its juicy thrill and rendering it a clinical moral correction. You must speak over the catcalls and jeers not with volume, but with an icy, unresponsive clarity that makes the crowd's excitement feel childish and crude by comparison. Historians still argue whether criers ever refused to deliver such proclamations on grounds of conscience, and what the consequences would be. As you practice the death sentence for the 10th time, your throat dry, you know the answer. To refuse is to become the next subject of such a proclamation. You are part of the machine. Your conscience is a luxury your position does not afford. The master watches you, his eyes like chips of flint. They must hear the law, he says, not the man speaking it. If they hear you pity him, they question the sentence. If they hear you hate him, they might rally to him. Be the wall. Be the gallows itself. It is not you who condemns. You are merely the wind that carries the scent of the rope. You finish the drill, the words, until he is dead, hanging in the silent courtyard. The master gives a single, slow nod. It is the first sign of approval that feels like a curse. You have passed. You have learned to hollow yourself out, to become a vessel for the darkest decrees of men. Your voice can now wield the finality of the grave. It is your most terrible skill, and the one that, more than any other, proves you have mastered the craft. You are no longer just a town crier. You are the voice of judgment, and in that role, you must learn to live with the echoes of the scaffold that will forever ring in your own silent mind. The years have passed, not in a blur, but in a series of distinct, shouted days. Market days, rainy days, hanging days, feast days. Your voice is no longer the instrument you train, it is the instrument you are. It has its own history now, a gravelly baritone that knows exactly how to ride the winter wind or cut through the summer stink of the tanneries. The townsfolk don't just hear your proclamations, they recognize your particular timbre the way they recognize the sound of the mill wheel or the parish bell. You are a fixture, a living part of the town's soundscape. And with that comes the final, inevitable duty, the passing of the bell. The master is gone, retired to a cottage where he speaks in a permanent, papery whisper. You are the master now. The bailiff brings you a boy, maybe 14, all sharp elbows and a voice that cracks between a child's treble and a man's bass. He looks at you not with fear, but with a bewildered awe that makes you feel ancient. This is your replacement. Your legacy will not be written in a ledger, it will be carried in the shaky breaths of this boy. The cycle begins in you, and you are the one who must turn the wheel. You take him to the bailiff's courtyard at dawn. The cold stones are the same. The feeling in the air is the same. But the perspective has shifted vertiginously. You are now the source of the grim silence, the evaluative gaze. You have him lie down. You place the heavy ledger on his skinny diaphragm. Breathe, you say, and the word comes out in your worn, authoritative rasp. You hear your old master in your own voice. It is unnerving. You teach him the candle, the straw, the projection against the merchant's wall. You watch him fail, and you understand, for the first time, the patience that must have lain beneath your own master's impatience. You are not just teaching skills, you are teaching survival. You share the mainstream historical truths, the importance of the bell's codes, the legal weight of clarity, the necessity of the memory palace. You tell him about the smooth river stone for the morning throat, about picturing his voice as a physical object to throw, about the ghost peal in the bells. These superstitions, these tricks of the mind, were the grease that helped you turn the colossal wheel of this profession. They are part of the craft's folklore, its living, oral history. You see him store each one away, his eyes wide. The hardest lesson to teach is composure. You cannot simulate a hostile crowd for him with the same cruelty you endured. You find you don't have the heart for it. Instead, you take him on your rounds, a silent shadow. You let him see the drunkard's leer, the noble's cold stare, the way children sometimes mimic your cry from a safe distance. You teach him by example, showing him the unbreakable wall of your own posture, the way you turn heckling into silence with a pause. They are not shouting at you, you tell him, echoing the past. They are shouting at the message. You are just the wall it's written on. Historians still argue about the continuity of the crier's craft, whether it was a true apprenticeship or a haphazard passing of the role. As you drill this boy, you feel the immense, fragile chain of which you are now a link. You are not just teaching a trade, you are transmitting the very voice of the town, ensuring that when yours finally gives way, another will rise to take its place, speaking the same rhythms into the same ancient air. One afternoon, you hand him the bell. It looks huge in his hand. Ring it, you say. His first rings are weak, clangy. You adjust his grip, show him the swing from the shoulder, not the wrist. He tries again. Brong. It is not your sound. It is younger, brighter, but it is a start. The sound hangs in the air, a new voice speaking the old language of iron. You have him cry, oh yes. It cracks on the second syllable. You almost smile. Again, you say, not unkindly. And he does. You listen to his voice fighting to find its power, and you hear in its strains the echo of your own beginnings, the ghost of every shout you've ever made, and the future of every shout yet to come. Your legacy is not in the echoes you leave behind, but in the new voice you are helping to raise. The town will go on. The laws will change, the faces will change, but the need for that voice, that clear, carrying, authoritative human signal, will remain. And you have ensured it will be heard. The echo of that young, cracking a yes seems to hang in your quiet room now, blending with the memory of your own weary, practiced shout. The courtyard fades, the cold stones warm into the familiar comfort of your bed, the cacophony of the medieval town softening into the gentle hum of a modern night. Think of it, that chain of voices, from master to apprentice, across centuries, across the chasm of time, all dedicated to the simple, profound act of being heard. They weren't just shouters. They were the human thread stitching community together with sound, the living pulse of news in a world of silence and rumor. Your own voice, now just a whisper in the dark, has carried you through their story. Feel the weight of that legacy not as a burden, but as a strange comfort. In a world now flooded with noise, where information is constant and disposable, there was a time when a single, trained, human voice was the most reliable thing in the world. It was a voice that could order a market, declare a feast, or deliver a sentence, and be trusted absolutely. That need for a clear, true signal in the chaos. Perhaps it's not so different from our search for a quiet, true story in the night. So let the image of that last, fading ring of the bell dissolve. Let the gravelly voice of the old crier soften into the gentle cadence of this one, right here, right now. The shouts are done. The proclamations are over. The town sleeps, and so can you. Your journey through the echoes of history is complete, leaving nothing but the quiet, the dark, and the soft, steady assurance that some voices, even when they fall silent, have shaped the world simply by speaking clearly into the storm. Now, let the silence itself be a comfort, deep and resonant and whole, carrying you into peaceful, dreamless sleep.